Just give us a brief overview of what happened with the bank that got us to this point.
It started with Bradford and Bingley. We took out a mortgage, myself and Sue, my wife, in 1988, and that was an endowment. And we went happily along, paying our monthly mortgage until 1999, when Sue was taking out some more life insurance, and the person there said, "You'll never pay this mortgage off."
Before that, they were just burying people, and they take your house and they take your car, and then you end up in the street or whatever, yeah. But and then you think it's all down to you. You've created your own problems and you feel a failure, and people have committed suicide. And we've had this going on all over the place, and it's just getting worse because the legislation is allowing them to do more and more of these things.
And banks are becoming more desperate.
And that's it. I mean, they've got the property. They're coming after anything now. They're coming after anything and everything. They're coming after people's vehicles. I mean, it seems that these asset resolution companies are really asset stripping companies operating on behalf of the government, ultimately. And so we're robbing ourselves. We're paying these people to rob us. I mean, the whole thing is, but it's so fundamentally flawed and ingratiated in fraud that the rules are not perfectly all right, but none of them have been adhered to.
I studied the rules and law, and it appears that none of the required proceedings are complied with.
So you had property which was taken from you.
Yes.
Unlawfully.
Unlawfully.
I contacted the bank, and lo and behold, they changed our agreement from an endowment to a part capital and part interest.
So you had no notification from the bank that this was
no,
and there were no signatures from you to agree to this in the first place?
None at all. In fact, they wrote a letter saying, "I'm very sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Crawford. We have no idea how this happened. That isn't our normal way of behaving." So they sent us a bottle of champagne and some flowers, and we assumed it all went back to the way it was. Not only did they change it from a part and part, 2002, we found out it was changed to an interest only. So they changed it twice.
Well, give me an idea of the scale of this. How many cases are you aware of this type of thing happening?
Many.
But are we talking 10, 100, 1,000?
We're talking about thousands.
Thousands of people that have assets
stolen away from them for nothing.
Guy, we've heard that the court procedures are not being followed. What is the procedure that's supposed to be followed before property is removed from an individual?
I mean, they should have gone through the court first and foremost for their procedures, and ultimately we're finding out that it hasn't gone through the court, because when we're examining the documents, we're finding there's been no fee paid and no court seal on the claim form.
A seal means a court stamp with the Queen heading on it, and in middle of the seal must be the date.
So if someone comes up to collect or to get your house, then they have to bring the correct statutory instrument, the warrant. If they haven't got that, they may as well be coming up with a McDonald's menu.
What effect has this had on your family?
Well, it's been disastrous. My family are terrorised. We can't leave the house. Sue, my wife, is either at work or at home, or I'm out and my daughter's in.
So you're never leaving the house?
No. We are seriously terrorised by the court. Say, for instance, a gang of guys were in the local pub, and they were drunk and they were playing cards, and they decided to trade my property. And they said, "Oh well, I'm going to put Guy Taylor's house on the table." And the other guy said, "Well, I'm going to put his car on the table." And they started trading with my goods without me knowing. And then whoever won the game came up with a piece of paper stating that they now owned these goods. It wouldn't be legitimate, and that's exactly what's going on in the courts.
Is it possible that the courts are bulk invoicing at the end of the month, or the end of the quarter, or the end of the year?
Well, this is what some people are trying to sort of claim, but there has to be a fee paid, and if you actually read the regulations, you'll find that the fee must be paid. You can't initiate a claim without a fee being paid and there being a seal upon the claim.
Now, you found a form on the internet, which is, it seems, or at least a form that looks very similar to it, is being used to justify action against people. And you find this form available as a pro forma for download
Yep.
from the internet.
There's several different types of form that have already got the seal on or stamp on. Yeah.
So what's to stop anyone downloading this form, filling it in, and using it?
Nothing at all.
And in your experience, do you think it's likely that if a bailiff firm were to be acting in a corrupt manner and they were to download that form and fill it in, that the police would support them in any action they took?
That's exactly what's happening. And the police, whether the police are doing unwittingly or wittingly is yet to be determined. But we certainly know that the coppers who arrive on the job are unwitting about it, and they're not able to describe what the process is. So they wouldn't recognise a legitimate form from a Daily Mail. In some situations, the solicitors are sending out claim forms, etc., but not even putting them through the court process, expecting them to get paid beforehand, because in most cases they do. Also, we found out that some companies are pretending that they're as a solicitor involved, i.e. Wonga. That's exactly what Wonga were doing. Wonga was sending out solicitors' letters when there weren't even solicitors' companies. So they were, rather than employing a group of solicitors to do what they could do, they were doing it that way. So I think we've got multiple variations all upon the same theme, and the same theme is fraud. But also now people, when they're getting access to their court files, are seeing that they've been robbed previously. And they may not, as Mr. Ebert was explaining, they may not have been evicted. They're a deprived tenant, which means basically someone's just conned them out of their house. So we're looking at regaining these properties.
If somebody's been deprived of the property unlawfully and somebody else has now moved into that property, then effectively they've bought something that they have no entitlement to, and they then find themselves homeless.
And that's unfortunate, and it's called caveat emptor, and buyer beware in law.
Absolutely, but my point here is that
Yeah.
this is going to be a pretty difficult thing to roll back from, isn't it?
Big time, it's going to have to be unravelled. So what do we do in those circumstances? We try, we try to work with the people. When we go and regain property, we'll try and work with the people who've taken the property over and show them that they've basically been ripped off. Yeah. But of course, in a lot of these cases, they bought the property for peanuts, and that's part of the problem. They bought the property for peanuts, in the full knowledge of what's gone on behind it, perhaps.
So in fact, it's not only buyer beware, but actually, there should be a clue if you're getting a £200,000 property for £120,000, then perhaps there's a clue in that.
If you're getting a £500,000 property for 80 grand, which has been going on, and there's a serious clue. But of course, at that stage, it's been bought by a developer who's well aware of the circumstances. Right. And so I think it's at that point, really, you need to go and repossess the property.
So they then notified you that they intended to repossess the property, is that correct?
On the 23rd of July 2014. And that's when I made my appeal.
So you made the two videos which you put on YouTube explaining what was going on.
I put the very first one was about 21 days before the eviction, asking people not as a protest, just to stand with my family in solidarity. And they did, and they came. There was about 350 came.
That was the first.
That was the first. Yeah.
And the bailiffs failed to turn up on that day.
And they failed to turn up.
So then there was a second attempt to repossess the property, and even more people turned up this time.
They do like the 23rd because it was the 23rd of January.
And do you think all those people that turned up, the 500 people that turned up at that second event, do you think they all fully understood what had happened in your case, or is there some broader issue that people are interested in getting protesting? Yeah,
I think the majority. I think my little video actually demonstrated the problem. I think they watched it, and we handed out over 500 denial of access, and there was still about another 200 plus we couldn't hand out because we'd run out of them. So it was about 700 turned up, and all of them were so well behaved. Our neighbours couldn't praise them more. Wonderful people. Right now, as we speak, My case has gone down to the complex case review in the Met to have it investigated. And
So you're in Nottingham, but that's actually gone to the Metropolitan
that's
Police.
right. And they will pass it back up, and they will have an officer that's more specialised. They won't really run it through the normal system because it's so complicated. The things that we've discovered that the court has been perpetrating on the people of this country.
You know something? I can tell you now we are not bailiffs.
Yeah. Really?
We just called the police now because you're blocking the dead end street.